Okay, in the last video, I talked a little bit about how frustrating the game and its community is. I want to talk in this video. I want to talk a little bit about how this frustration is created, comes into existence, and mainly focus on the disconnect between the community and Nexon. To illustrate this disconnect, I wanna I have an anecdote about Coyote, which is not a personal quarrel towards Coyote, but I think it's a pretty good description of how Nexon and the community interact. So in Berlin, when we suggested things such as remove loaded weapons, remove custom weapons, Coyote would agree to everything. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, sure, we'll take this into consideration, etc. And yeah, well, we were all kind of hopeful about that would actually happen. And when the loaded weapons were then eventually released, and the community lashed back, then they actually were like removed from the shop, which was pretty good. But now, a couple days ago, people gained access to loaded weapons again through, I think it's called the Mist 5 or something, whatever you got after the Spiders versus Scorpions event as winners. Loaded weapons came back into the game on a massive scale, like pretty much everybody that opened the Mist 5 got one. I've seen people get perm loaded weapons from the things, from the cases. Um, and now he responds on the forum to, well, the amount of weapons is limited, whatever that may be, because like everybody had the chance to get one, which I think is absolutely fucking retarded, but that's a different point. And he said that because it was limited, it didn't interfere with the game's balance. I think I think it's a good display of how disconnected it is, because apparently it's obvious in the meeting that we don't like the loaded weapons. It's obvious after they are released the first time after the meeting. It's obvious again when we say, well, why the fuck are they being sold again with the Mist 5, or actually given for free with the Mist 5 thing. And on all three steps, well, we say we don't want them. On all three steps, they come back eventually. And I think that's a very big part of the frustration felt by a lot of players, that whatever they input, you're never sure if they're gonna take you serious, and even if they take you serious at the meeting, for example, they're probably not gonna do anything with it. And that makes a lot of players quit. Like, the main frustration for them, gameplay wise, is gear and weaponry, and if they're imbalanced, then they're gonna get fucked by like a 40 speed female running around with a max set or a loaded weapon. Then they might as well Alt F4 and just delete the game from their computer. For me, the disconnect between the community and Nexon is more frustrating. Like the part where loaded weapons come back even though we say we don't want them. Just because I do a lot, I'm active a lot in trying to balance the game, like give examples how to. And I think that the strategy that Nexon Europe, or actually Nexon, takes is a very Korean one. Like the profit strategy of Nexon Korea is probably something like make users into addicts and then pretty much force them to sell to buy stuff. When in Europe, a lot of games are based on, well, we'll have a good game, people will want to play it. Let's find a way for them to support our game without actually, well, breaking it with broken gear or whatever. Um, like the development of Combat Arms is in the Korean hands. I think the greater deal of the players are European, American, or even Brazilian. And I think that is also like a very big part of the disconnect between the community and Nexon. Korea is very different in its approach to balance and its approach to the community. The Koreans don't really listen to the community. The Korean community in Common Arms is very, very small, so that doesn't really matter in the end. Um, and because the Koreans are in charge, we get the loaded weapons, we get the custom weapons. We're gonna probably get the core weapons. Um, and in my opinion, that development process, like bringing loaded into the game, bringing custom into the game, taking it out, um, like the development process, it should be more in the hands of the community. And since the community is much closer to the European headquarters, so the European management than the Korean ones, I think it should be moved. Like the Korean development team should be under the control of the European headquarters. Um, and I think that in that way, maybe uh, we as a community can have a voice, and we will be listened to earlier, faster than we would be listened to by the Koreans. Uh, I don't want to make this into a quarrel with the Koreans either. It's their style. They're actually trying to change it, which was apparent at the meeting, and I admire them for trying to, but I don't think it's going fast enough for Combat Arms to survive like the change. I think it needs to go faster. I think the community has to be eased into a balancing process. I described that process, like easing them into, in the previous video, where I said that all variants of all guns should be made in the same stats, should be equal to each other, which would already balance the game a little bit, and then it would make it easier to actually like compare weapons and balance them out. In the balancing department, I think Nexon is very scared to mess with it, apart from adding layer after layer after layer of broken weapons. Even though many established esport games, CS:GO, League of Legends, mess with the balance continually, constantly. Um, for example, CS:GO with the accuracy changes, League changes the jungle, etc. every year. So they are very free in doing so. Um, Negative backlash from the community is often ignored a little bit, unless it continues. Like the input of the community will be taken into account, but they won't necessarily listen to them if they're negative about something, which is of course something that Nexon also does, but they just completely disregard pretty much what we say. I think that balancing the variants of weapons should already um, ease the community into balance changes. And I think that if you want to make Combat Arms competitive or more competitive, in the UI you have a couple of suggested modes in the matchmaking that are like instantly visible, and I would suggest that PCM Search and Destroy would be one of the first three modes suggested in it. So, for example, it would be Elimination, Woman Army, PCM Search and Destroy, or something like that. And I think in this way we can kind of transform and ease the community into a more balanced Combat Arms, more competitive Combat Arms. I think to help this balancing process, the beta server that is now available to a couple of players to test out the graphics changes, it should continue to be accessible for still a select group of players who can review and comment on balancing changes, on the new UI, for example, stuff like that. And yeah, I think that the community, it should be have a greater role in the development of Command Arms than it has right now. And I think that's where I'm gonna end this video. Thanks for watching. Discuss.